Have you ever felt a chill in a place that should be safe? Imagine a fortress of stone and light, built to defy the most violent storms, a place of ultimate isolation. Now, imagine its three guardians vanishing from within its locked walls, leaving behind only an untouched meal, a knocked-over chair, and a silence that has screamed across the ocean for more than a century. This is the true, unsolved mystery of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. Our story takes us to the dawn of the 20th century, to a remote and desolate cluster of rocks in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, known as the Flannan Isles. Upon the largest of these, Eilean Mòr, stood a newly built lighthouse, a beacon of modern engineering. In December of 1900, this lonely outpost was manned by a three-man team of experienced keepers: Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, the latter a seasoned mariner serving as an occasional keeper. The men were on a 2-week rotation, their only connection to the outside world being the relief vessel that serviced the lighthouse. Their job was simple but vital: keep the light burning no matter what. For the ships navigating the treacherous North Atlantic, that single beam of light was the difference between safe passage and a watery grave on the jagged rocks below. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on December 15, 1900. The steamer Archtor, on its passage from Philadelphia to Leith, noted in its log that the Flannan light was not operational during a storm. This was highly unusual and a serious breach of protocol for the meticulous Northern Lighthouse Board. However, the report was not immediately passed on to the board upon the ship's arrival. It wasn't until Boxing Day, December 26th, that the mystery truly began to unfold. The relief vessel, the Hesperus, finally made its way to Eilean Mòr, delayed by the same violent storms that had been battering the coast. As Captain James Harvey approached the island, a sense of unease settled over the crew. The lighthouse was silent. There was no flag flying from the pole, and none of the keepers were waiting on the landing platform to greet them. Joseph Moore, a relief keeper, was the first to set foot on the island. He rowed ashore and began the long climb up the steep stone staircase to the lighthouse entrance. He found the main door and the gate leading to the compound both closed. Inside, the silence was heavy and unnatural. The first thing he noticed was the kitchen clock. It had stopped. The ashes in the fireplace were cold. The scene inside was deeply unsettling. On the kitchen table, a meal of meat, pickles, and potatoes was laid out, untouched, as if the men had been about to eat when they were suddenly called away. In the entryway, a single chair was overturned, a small but jarring detail in the otherwise orderly space. It was the only sign of any kind of haste or disturbance within the entire lighthouse. Moore continued his search, his dread growing with every step. He found the keepers' beds unmade and their oilskins, their heavy-duty waterproof gear, were gone. Specifically, 2 sets of oilskins were missing. The third set, belonging to Donald MacArthur, was still hanging on its peg. This suggested that one man had gone out into the storm without his protective gear, a highly improbable act for an experienced mariner. The most significant clue was the lighthouse logbook. The entries were routine until December 12th. On that day, Principal Keeper Thomas Marshall wrote of a severe storm, the likes of which he had never seen in 20 years. He described James Duckett as being very quiet and Donald MacArthur as crying. This was shocking, as MacArthur was known as a tough, brawling seaman, not a man given to tears. The log entries for the next 2 days continued to describe the ferocious storm, with the men praying for it to pass. The final entry on December 15th was brief and almost serene. It read, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." But weather reports for the area showed no storms on the 12th, 13th, or 14th of December. The violent weather had not actually hit the islands until the 16th. What storm were the men describing? A thorough search of the island was conducted. The relief crew scoured every inch of the rocky outcrop, from the lighthouse down to the two landing stages, one on the east and one on the west. They found no bodies, no signs of the men anywhere. It was as if the island itself had swallowed them whole. They had vanished into the thin, salt-laced air. The investigators from the Northern Lighthouse Board, led by Superintendent Robert Muirhead, arrived a few days later to conduct the official inquiry. Muirhead was a man of logic and reason, not given to flights of fancy. He immediately focused on the physical evidence on the island, particularly the state of the landing platforms. On the western landing, he found significant damage. A supply box had been smashed open, its contents strewn about. Iron railings were bent and twisted out of shape, and a block of stone weighing more than a ton had been dislodged. A life buoy, normally secured to the rock face over 100 feet above sea level, had been ripped from its mountings. The evidence pointed to a storm of incredible, almost unimaginable power. From these clues, Muirhead pieced together the official and most widely accepted explanation. He theorized that on the afternoon of December 15th, after the storm they had been logging had passed, Marshall and Duckett went down to the western landing to secure the equipment. They left MacArthur behind in the lighthouse, hence why his oilskins remained. According to this theory, while the two men were on the landing platform, a massive, unexpected rogue wave rose up from the calm sea and swept over the cliff, pulling both of them into the churning Atlantic. Back at the lighthouse, MacArthur, seeing his companions in peril, would have raced out to help them, forgetting his oilskins in his panic. He too would have been claimed by the next powerful wave. This rogue wave theory accounts for many of the strange details. It explains why two sets of oilskins were gone and one was left behind. It explains the damage at the landing platform. It provides a logical, if terrifying, sequence of events that could result in three experienced men being lost without a trace. It presented a plausible accident, a tragedy born from the raw, unpredictable power of the sea. However, the theory is not without its problems. Why would three veteran keepers, men who knew the sea better than anyone, have gone down to the landing during a storm? Why would one of them go out without his oilskins, even in an emergency? And what of the logbook entries? The strange descriptions of the storm on days when the weather was calm and the report of a hardened sailor crying have never been adequately explained. The untouched meal and the stopped clock also remain nagging questions. The official theory suggests they were swept away in the afternoon, but the scene in the kitchen implies an interruption around dinner time. These inconsistencies have kept the door open for a century of speculation, with theories ranging from the plausible to the paranormal. One alternative theory suggests a more personal drama. Perhaps an argument broke out between the three men, trapped in the claustrophobic confines of the lighthouse. It's possible that a fight ensued, resulting in one or two of the men being killed. The survivor, mad with guilt and grief, would have then thrown the bodies and himself into the sea. The overturned chair is often cited as evidence for this violent scenario. Others have suggested a more sinister human element. The early 1900s were a time of international tension. Could the men have been abducted by foreign spies or pirates, perhaps seeking information about shipping routes? While there is absolutely no evidence for this, the complete lack of bodies has allowed such espionage theories to persist in the darker corners of speculation. And then there are the supernatural explanations, born from the island's ancient and eerie folklore. Eilean Mòr, which means Big Isle in Gaelic, has long been considered a place of strange power. It was named for St. Flannan, a 7th century Irish bishop, but it was believed to be inhabited by otherworldly spirits or little people long before. Shepherds in the past would not even keep their sheep on the island overnight for fear of them being spirited away. Could the men have fallen victim to some ancient, malevolent force on the island? Some have pointed to the logbook's description of the storm as a metaphor for some kind of psychological or supernatural torment. The story of Donald MacArthur crying takes on a new, more sinister meaning in this light. Were they driven mad by the isolation and the island's strange energy? The lack of a true breakthrough, a definitive piece of evidence like a body or a final note, is what makes this case so unique. The breakthrough was simply the establishment of an official story, a rational narrative imposed upon a set of baffling and incomplete clues. Robert Muirhead's report provided an ending, but it did not provide absolute certainty. The official theory closed the book on the investigation, but it could never close the book on the mystery. It provided a plausible scenario that satisfied the authorities and allowed the Northern Lighthouse Board to move forward, but it left a void where the truth should be. It answered the how, but could never truly answer the why. The immediate aftermath of the disappearances was one of deep shock and sorrow. The loss of 3 men from the small, tight-knit communities of the Outer Hebrides was a devastating blow. The sea was a part of life and death, but a mystery like this was different. It left the families with no bodies to bury and no closure to their grief. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was not abandoned. A new team of keepers was brought in, and the light was quickly relit. But the story of their vanished predecessors cast a long, dark shadow over the station. Keepers who served there in the following years reported an eerie, unnerving atmosphere, a sense of being watched, and strange voices crying on the wind. The official verdict was accidental death by drowning. There was no trial, no one to blame. The sea was the only culprit named. The Northern Lighthouse Board reviewed its procedures, but ultimately concluded that the men were lost to an act of God, a freak accident that no amount of training or regulation could have prevented. The wives and families of the lost keepers were left to live with the uncertainty. The mystery became a painful part of their family history, a story passed down through generations. The lack of answers was a wound that could never truly heal, a constant reminder of the men who went to work one day and never came home. The legacy of the Flannan Isles mystery is its remarkable and chilling endurance. It has become one of the most famous and retold maritime mysteries of all time, a perfect ghost story of the sea. It has transcended from a simple historical event into a piece of modern folklore. The story's power lies in its unanswered questions and its eerie, atmospheric details. The untouched meal, the stopped clock, the weeping sailor, the cryptic logbook. These are the elements that have captured the public imagination and inspired countless works of art, including the famous poem, Flannan Isle by Wilfred Wilson Gibson, an opera called The Lighthouse, and even a modern feature film. The case serves as a powerful reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sea and the profound isolation faced by lighthouse keepers, who were truly sentinels on the edge of the world. It highlights the psychological toll of a job that required men to live for weeks on end in a tiny space, surrounded by the constant roar of the ocean. The official explanation, the rogue wave theory, remains the most logical. It is a testament to the fact that the natural world can produce events so powerful and so sudden that they defy easy belief. The sea does not need ghosts or monsters to be terrifying. Its own reality is often more frightening than any fiction. But the inconsistencies in that theory ensure that the mystery will likely never be put to rest. The strange logbook entries in particular suggest that something else was happening on that island, something beyond just a bad storm. Was it a shared delusion brought on by stress and isolation, or a record of something else entirely? Today, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse is fully automated. No keepers walk its halls or climb its winding stairs. It stands silent, a stone monument to a bygone era and to the 3 men who became part of its legend. the island of Eilean Mòr remains a place of profound mystery and solitude. We are left staring out at a cold, gray sea, with the same questions that have been asked for over 120 years. Did a freak wave, a force of nature beyond comprehension, claim the three keepers in an instant of violent chaos? Or was their disappearance the result of a darker, more human drama played out on that lonely rock? Perhaps the most chilling possibility is that the logbook tells the truth, but not about the weather. Perhaps the storm the men described was one of fear, a psychological tempest that drove them from the safety of the lighthouse and out into the real storm that was waiting for them. The truth, whatever it may be, was washed away by the waves of the North Atlantic, leaving behind an empty lighthouse and an eternal question. What really happened to Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur? The silent, stoic lighthouse on Eilean Mòr is the only remaining witness, and it has never shared its secret.